And that has nothing to do with making music, because then the instrument dictates what you have to play or where you have to play. Good morning! I watch too many Emma Chamberlain videos, but other than that, I'm doing fine. And today I want to talk about scales. I want to talk about the 3 types of scales, and I want to talk about some things that I repeatedly see with my students. So basically there are 3 scales you absolutely have to learn. So I would say 2 scales that you absolutely have to learn in the beginning would be the major scale and the harmonic minor scale, and then the melodic minor scale. So as you probably know, there are lots of different patterns how you can play a scale on the fretboard. So you can play a 3-note pattern, or you can play in one position. I have to say, what worked the best for me is that I learned 5 positions for every scale that I learned. So let's try to think about a scale and forget for a moment that we are guitarists. So most of the scales have 7 notes. Okay, the pentatonic has 5. Some of the symmetrical scales have 8. Most of the scales have 7 notes, and you have a range on the guitar from the lowest note of the E, probably up to the D or the C sharp, or maybe even higher. Basically, all that you want to be doing is to play the scale in all registers and also being able to play it everywhere on the fretboard. So one thing that drives me insane, I have a student and I say, are you able to play the arpeggios? Okay, I know we are talking about scales, but it's a little bit the same. So are you able to play arpeggios? And then the student says, yes! And then I say, great, so please play, let's say, the F major 7 arpeggio for me. Yes, yes. That's so funny to me, because that's great that you can play the F major arpeggio here. Because if you're going to solo here, and then you're going to play the F major arpeggio, or if you're going to solo up here, and then... So the point I'm trying to make is, if you don't know your stuff on the whole fretboard, so maybe in the beginning up to the 12th fret, but in the end on the whole fretboard, you always have to change the position in your solo, because you don't know where your pattern is. Going to be like a rupture, and that has nothing to do with making music, because then the instrument dictates what you have to play or where you have to play, and not what you want to hear. Going to demonstrate for you the 5 patterns of the major scale. And then also there's a PDF that I'm going to write down. You can download that PDF, and then you will have 5 patterns for each of those scales. So basically you're segmenting the fretboard into 5 sections, and then in those sections you're playing all the notes that are in the scale. And of course you can't always be starting with the root, otherwise you would always be starting here in the case of G, right? So, and the F sharp belongs as well to the scale, so you would be playing that as well. And the A you would be playing as well because it belongs to the key as well. And you just want to make sure that if you're playing this section of the fretboard, that you're playing all the notes that are contained in that scale. And the same goes for this section and for this section and all the sections. As you might know, the major scale has other modes as well. Okay, it's Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian and Locrian, right? You need to drink some coffee. All these scales contain the same notes, right? So how can you make a difference? You could be playing the same patterns and you could be sounding out different modes. So one way how you could do that is to record the root of the mode that you're going to play on your looper. So let's say you would be playing A Dorian, then you would record an A. And then you would be playing same notes over that root, but it won't be sounding out G major anymore, right? It will be sounding out A Dorian. The lowest note always tells the ears, so to speak, which mode you are playing. So if you're playing, for example, a C and you have an A in the bass, then this is going to be a minor third. The ear is going to recognize it as a minor third. But if you're having a G in the bass, then the ear is going to recognize it as a 4. And so, in other words, if a bass player plays a certain bass note, you can play as much G major scale as you'd like to. The bass player is going to play an E. It's going to sound E Aeolian. Please get away from the idea that this is G Ionian and this is A Dorian and this is B Phrygian and this is C Lydian. That's sort of true because you're starting with the lowest note and then the ear hears it in that mode. If you think about the scale like this, it's really a limiting belief because then you can only play A Dorian here, right? And even much worse, some people only think they can play A Dorian only if they start on the A. But that's not true. And now to the bad news. You have to learn all those modes that you hear them maybe even before you play them. And then you'll hear the C as a minor third in your ears. Or maybe a flat 6 if it's E Aeolian, right? And you don't need to confirm it through starting on the root note. Every position can present every mode. And one trick that I learned a long time ago, that's really great if you're in G major, let's say you are in G major, you take the triad on the 4th and the 5th step, so that would be C major and D major. And then you put the root of the mode that you want to play under those two triads. So if you would be playing A Dorian, you could play A, in this case. We're lucky we have the open string. So that would be Dorian, right? You can record yourself a jam track, or if you want to practice E Aeolian, again, open E string. Can you hear the difference? Try practicing those scales in sequences, like, in thirds. By the way, I'm selling a mug, not this one. This is Emma Chamberlain's coffee. That's the major scale. So the good news is, if you have this scale down, you only need to change one note and you could play the melodic minor scale. Let's try to play the G Dorian scale. If you raise the F to the F sharp there you go. That's the melodic minor scale. And there's another good news if you're playing the G Aeolian scale. And you want to play harmonic minor, there's also only one note that is changing, and it's again the F that's moving to the F sharp. Interesting, right? So harmonic minor, I don't use it a lot. Here are two shortcuts if you're improvising over a 2-5-1 in the minor key, let's say D half diminished G7 C minor. You could use the C harmonic minor scale all over the progression. And if you would be playing a 2-5 in C major, you could also be thinking C major over those three chords, or you could also be thinking D Dorian. And that's just a shortcut that gets you started. Please don't forget that you can make music with any scale that you have. You don't need the craziest scales or chords or superimposed arpeggios. Most of you, I guess, have everything at their disposal to make music and to improvise. Give yourself the time to improvise. So make sure you learn your basics, take the time. Remember that all the great musicians, they're all working on the basics and are continuing to working on the basics, and there's no shortcut. You can handle it. I hope you're doing fine, and I see you next week. Goodbye.